Satori Software about the January 27th rate change. Before we get started here, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. First of all, if you do have any questions throughout the course of this webinar today, feel free to type your question into that questions box in the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We're going to have some time at the end of the webinar today to answer any questions that you have about the topics that we'll be covering. Also, when you close out of the webinar today, you will be redirected to a short survey that will ask you about your experience with this webinar. We'd love it if you would fill out that survey, and that'll help us to improve the quality of our webinars in the future. Also, before I get started here, we are going to be recording this webinar today, and the recording, and as well as the PowerPoint slides, will be posted on our website by the end of this week, and we'll let you know when those are available. So if you'd like to have a copy of those after the webinar today, then those will be available on our website by the end of the week here. So today's session is going to be covering the January 27th rate change, and there is a little bit more to this rate change than just the price increase. So we'll be covering all of the little nitty-gritty details about what's going to be changing here in January of 2013. My name is Kim Mock, and I'm the Postal Product Specialist here at Satori, and we'll be glad to answer any of the questions that you have about this topic. Again, just type those into that questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. So let's take a look at what we're actually going to be covering today. The first thing that we're going to cover is we're going to go over a little bit of a history of exactly why these rates are changing and how much they are going to be going up, as well as the exact dates that you'll need to know in order to be compliant with these rate changes. We're going to be talking a little bit about some new mailpiece design requirements. There are some rules that are going to be going to effect here in 2013 that you'll need to be aware of, so we'll make sure that we cover all of those for you. The next thing we're going to do is do a pretty in-depth look at all of the rates that are going to be changing here in 2013. Pretty much every rate is going to be changing. We won't be covering all of them, but we'll go into some examples so you can see kind of how your rates will be increasing here. We'll also talk about some new sort changes and piece types that are going to be available in the new year. There are some new programs that the Post Office is offering, including some new incentives, and we'll take a look at those as well. So if you have any questions about those, we'll be covering those in today's webinar, as well as some other miscellaneous items that are going to be changing here in January that you'll need to be aware of. So we'll make sure to cover all of that information for you. So let's go ahead and get started here. Let's take a look at why these rates are changing. So the next, the thing that we want to cover here is the introduction of the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act. And PAEA, or as it's termed, was enacted by Congress in 2006, and in 2006 they decided that they wanted to create some predictability in the rate changes that mailers would go through. And so as part of this act, the Post Office is now required to make sure that all of the rates for each rate class are going to be kept within the CPI cap. So basically, for each rate class, on average, they'll be going up at about the same rate as inflation. Now, there are a couple of key dates that we'll want to make sure that you're aware of. The first is there are going to be some changes for folded self-mailers. Folded self-mailers are a letter-sized mail piece that is not in an envelope and not bound in any way. So those rate changes the structure changes are going to go into effect in January on the 5th there. So we'll want to make sure that if you're using folded self-mailers that you're using those new regulations by January 5th. And then also the additional changes, including the prices, the postage statements, and the other information there, all the new new prices and new rate types are going to be effective on January 27th, 2013. So let's take a look at what we're going to need to do in order to change our mail piece design for 2013. So the first and the very most important piece of the changes that are going to be effective in January is that the PostNet and the Planet barcodes are going to be retiring. The Post Office has been talking about this for quite a while, and they have finally pulled the trigger. The PostNet and the Planet barcodes are going to be going away on January 27th. So that doesn't mean you can't print those on the mail piece. However, you won't get the benefits of those barcodes anymore. So if you would like to get automation rates, or if you'd like to get tracking information, you will not be able to get those using the PostNet and Planet barcodes starting next year. If you do want to get automation rates or tracking information, you will need to migrate to the Intelligent Mail barcode. Now, if you've been using the Planet barcode and you have some mailings that are out there and they're actively getting scans with that Planet barcode, you will be able to get scans until February 1st. So, so you've got a really short window there to get those final scans from your Planet barcode, which was the old tracking barcode, and then of course with PostNet, the hard date there for that is January 27th. Now, if you do have questions about the Intelligent Mail barcode and migrating from the PostNet barcode to IMB, we do have a webinar called Intelligent Mail 101 that we've recorded, and that recording is available on our website. And so if you go to satorisoftware.com/webinars, there's a link there for all of our recorded webinars, and we strongly recommend, if you haven't moved over to the Intelligent Mail barcode, feel free to take a look at that webinar, and it'll give you more information about how to make that change over to IMB. Now, in addition to the barcode requirements that are going to be effective in January, there are some changes for folded self-mailers. So let's take a little bit of a look at folded self-mailers and exactly what's changing here. So a folded self-mailer is basically a mail piece that's formed when you take a piece of paper and you fold it at least once to create 2 panels or more, and that mail piece is actually secured by either tabs or glue, so it's not in an envelope, and it's not using any bindings like a staple or stitching or perfect binding or anything like that. And basically what happened was the Post Office was finding that these folded self-mailers were getting caught in the automation equipment at the Post Office. So as these folded self-mailers were processed on the machines, they were getting folded, they were getting torn, there were all kinds of problems, and basically these mail pieces were ending up getting pretty mangled and not delivered intact. So what the Post Office did was they contacted several mailers, and they had the mailers create some possible mail piece designs. And they actually tested over 250,000 pieces during the process of this test. So they created real mail pieces, and they sent them through the automation equipment at the Post Office, and they basically observed what mail pieces were processed well and which mail pieces were not processed well. And you can kind of see at the bottom here some examples of some mail pieces that didn't really get processed very well on the automation equipment. So as a result of all of these tests, the Post Office came up with some new guidelines for creating these new folded self-mailers. So, so if you are creating those folded self-mailers today, you'll want to make sure that they do comply with these new standards. Now, the first and most important rule when it comes to these new folded self-mailers is the maximum dimensions for these mail pieces have changed. So, so a regular letter size mail piece is going to be a little bit larger than what a folded self-mailer can be. So the folded self-mailers can be no higher than 6 inches high and no longer than 10.5 inches. So, so there is a little bit of a special consideration for this design of a mail piece. Now, it's important to note when you're looking at all of these folded self-mailer rules that they talk a lot about panels. And basically a panel is created anytime you take a piece of paper and you fold it. So if you take a piece of paper and fold it in half, then that creates 2 panels on the mail piece there. Now, there are a couple of requirements here for the minimum number of panels that are available, and also the weight of the paper on that outside panels. So the first thing is that you are required to at least have 2 panels, because obviously you can't have a folded self-mailer with only one, because then it's not folded. But and then also the paper weight of the outside of that mail piece does need to be at least a 70-pound basis weight. So that's going to make sure that that those pieces are sturdy enough to be able to be processed through that equipment at the post office. Now, there are some exceptions to these requirements, and that's specifically for newsletters that are designed in what they call a quarter fold design. So so basically, you're folding lengthwise, and then you're folding height-wise, and so if you are using that quarter fold design, then you are allowed to have a little bit lighter paper weight for the outside of that mail piece, and you will be required to have more panels in a mail piece of that design. So you would have to have at least 8 panels in that quarter fold design. And so you can fold these up in several different ways. There are a lot of creative ways that you can create these folded self-mailers, but there is a maximum of 12 panels for most designs and a maximum of 24 panels for those quarter fold newspapers. So let's talk a little bit more about these requirements here. The first requirement is basically where that final fold is. So the final fold is the fold that creates the final panel on that mail piece. And that final fold now must be either on the bottom of the mail piece or on the leading edge. And they define the leading edge as the right side of the mail piece when you're looking at the address. Now, the other thing to note is that final fold that creates that final panel must also be on the non-addressed side of the mail piece. And this actually makes it a little tricky for trifold designs. So if you think about taking a regular sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper and folding it into a trifold or a brochure design there, it used to be that you could put the address on either the top or bottom of the unfolded page. And that actually won't be available anymore. Now you'll have to print that address on the center panel of that mail piece when you're doing that trifold design. Another thing to note with these new folded self-mailer rules is all of these panels must be secured with tabs or glue. So you can use glue dots or glue lines. And depending on the size of your mail piece and the weight of it, you'll need to use either 2 to 3 tabs, and they can be either paper or plastic, but they cannot be perforated. You also cannot put any tabs on the bottom of the mail piece. So if you're looking at the address, that bottom side of the mail piece shouldn't have any tabs because, again, that should either have the final fold or that final fold would be on the right side. Now, I know we're going to get a lot of questions about these FSM rules. There's a lot of intricacies with these rules. And so if you have any questions about whether your mail piece actually does apply for these new folded self-mailer rules, the first thing that I would suggest is actually checking out the new folded self-mailer diagrams that are available on the RIBS website. So if you go to ribs.usps.gov and take a look there for folded self-mailers, there's actually an entire section there that has a bunch of designs that are actually approved. Now, it's not a comprehensive set, so there are designs that will be approved that are not on there, but it does give you an idea of the guidelines. In addition, if you do have something that's outside the bounds or at the edge of the regulations here, and you're not really sure whether that folded self-mailer does apply and that it is legal for those automation rates, then in that case, I would strongly recommend that you contact your mail piece design analyst or your MDA, and they'll be able to take a look at your design and tell you whether that is actually going to apply for those automation rates there. So we could probably spend another half an hour talking about these new FSM rules, but we want to get into the prices as well. So let's take a look at what the prices are going to be starting in January here. So again, those prices are going to be effective January 27th. And basically, the Post Office announced both their market dominant and their competitive rates at the same time. So they consider their market dominant prices to be those rates, those rate categories that they have a monopoly over. So this would be things like first-class mail, standard mail, and periodicals. They also announced their competitive prices, and those are going to be the rates for, say, an example, the express mail and priority mail shipments. All of those are considered competitive prices. The prices for both were announced at the same time, which was nice for mailers. And the prices, on average, for all prices went up about 4%. And then the prices for those market dominant rates actually only went up 2.57%, which is actually the rate that's atop of that CPI cap that that they'd be able to increase those prices to. So as part of this process of getting their rates approved, the Post Office has to propose these rates to the PRC, which is the Postal Regulatory Commission. And then the Commission actually takes a look at them and makes sure that, that they're actually making sure that all of the rates are going to cover the costs of processing this mail. Now, there was a little bit of a stir about the originally proposed standard mail flat rates. The Post Office went back and reworked those rates and resubmitted them to the PRC. And the PRC actually made their final ruling on all of these rates yesterday, and all of the rates have been approved. So there's not going to be any question about what rates are going to be effective in January 27th. All of those are available at this point in time. So let's take a look at these rates in a little bit more detail. First, let's take a look at first-class mail. And first-class mail prices, on average, increased about 2.57%. So that, again, is the maximum that they were allowed to increase the prices due to that CPI cap. And the one thing to note here is that the price for a single piece stamp, so just the normal first-class stamp rate, is going to increase 1 penny. So if you like to purchase stamps for your personal correspondence, or if you send retail first-class mail, I recommend buying your Forever Stamp stamp, because they are going to go up 1 penny here in January. And then when you take a look at the rates that are listed down below here, you'll kind of see how these rates are going to be increased over the course of the year. So you'll notice that the rates for that mixed AABC letter, which is the most expensive automation rate that you can get, those actually didn't increase very much, because they want to encourage more people to get into automation, and so they wanted to make sure that was a really approachable rate there. And you'll notice that the rates for kind of the higher sorts, like the 5-digit rate there for automation mail, increased quite a bit. And the reason for that, again, is because once you've started preparing for automation, going into those higher sort tiers isn't as difficult for the mailers. Let's take a look at some more rates that are available here for our cards and our flats. You'll see that the single-piece rate for postcards went up quite a bit, and that's because they needed to make sure that that was a round number, so that someone can actually pay for that retail rate there. And then the other rates that are available here didn't go up quite as much, except that 3-digit flat actually went up quite a bit. And 3-digit rates overall tended to go up a little bit more than most of the other rates, and the reason for that is because of the additional processing that's required at the 3-digit level. Now let's take a look at standard mail. Standard mail, just like first-class mail, had an overall increase of 2.57%, which was the maximum amount that they could raise their rates for this year. One important rate to note here is for users who are using that Everydoor Direct Mail program, or the EDDM program at the Post Office. This is a way for you to send saturation mail to a certain area, either a certain zip code or a carrier route. And basically, if you are dropping off at a retail facility, so at the final DDU for that mail piece, then the rates for that have gone up to 16 cents per piece. So it used to be, I think, about 14.2 cents. So that rate has gone up quite a bit for the retail rate. Now, if you want to do EDDM and you're dropping at a BMEU, so if you're dropping off at the business mail entry unit, then the rates for saturation unaddressed mail are still rather low, and they're definitely less than the 16-cent rate. So let's take a look at the rates that we have for letters here. You'll notice that, again, that 3-digit rate tended to go up a little bit more. You'll also notice that machinable mixed AABC rate went up quite a bit. And the reason for that is, again, they wanted to encourage mailers to make the jump from machinable mail to automation mail. So they were trying to make that as compelling and enticing there for those mailers as they could. And then we can take a look at some additional rates that are available for standard mail. You'll notice that the basic carrier route letter rate, which is basically the first step into carrier route mail, that rate actually went up quite a bit. And again, the reason for that is the additional processing that's required at the post office. And so they wanted to make sure that that was covering the cost of processing. You'll also notice a new rate category that's listed here, and it's called High Density Plus. If you're familiar with carrier route mail at all, you're very familiar with high density rates and saturation rates. They are introducing a new price for High Density Plus, which is a new rate category, and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. And again, you'll see all the rates that are available here for flats as well. And again, those 3-digit flats are tending to go up quite a bit just because of that additional processing. In addition to those, here are the carrier route rates for flats. You'll see that addition of the High Density Plus for flats as well. You'll also notice some rates here for parcels. So depending on whether you're going to drop this mail off at an NDC or an SCF, you'll see those rates going up less or more depending on the facility. SCF entry for parcels tends to be pretty cumbersome for the post office, so you'll see that rate went up pretty significantly there. So next, let's talk about periodicals. Periodicals are an interesting rate category just because of the way that the pricing structure is architected here. And overall, the prices for periodicals went up 2.56%. So that's just a little bit less than that CPI cap. And another thing to note for periodical mailers is it used to be you would have an additional fee if you wanted to drop your mail off at more than one facility. So if you are familiar with that way of doing things, you actually won't have to pay that fee anymore. You will still need to make an application to drop at that additional facility. However, the fee that's associated with that is no longer going to apply, which is very nice here. And here you can see some examples of the rate categories that are available in periodicals mail. You'll see that the rates for in-county automation basic letters are going up a little bit more, and some of the rates are going up a little bit less there. And then we can also take a look at the outside county rates. You'll notice here that a lot of these are going up about the same rate as the CPI cap. However, that last entry there for the 5-digit pallets, overall, the pallet rates tended to increase quite a bit more for periodicals during this rate change, and the reason for that is because of the additional processing that's required for pallets. So let's talk a little bit about the new sort categories that we mentioned here, and there are a couple more that are available as well. The first is going to be for first-class mail. So one of the things that the post office was noticing was there were a lot of first-class mailers that would take 1-ounce pieces and 2-ounce pieces and want to put them all into the same tray. Now, with the pre-sorted mail, so either the pre-sorted, the automation and non-automation sorted mail, you can combine those pieces, and you can actually get the same rate for both your 1-ounce and your 2-ounce pieces. But that actually wasn't true for single piece. And so what they've done is they've introduced a new rate for these single pieces called the residual single piece rate, and it allows you to take 1-ounce and 2-ounce pieces, put them all in the same tray, and they can all be attached with the same rate. That's just a few cents more than the regular single piece rate. The next sort category that they introduced is called High Density Plus. Again, this is for carrier route mail, and it's available for standard mail and periodicals. And basically what High Density Plus is it's a way to get a new rate tier between that high density and that saturation rate. And the high density rate actually is going to be what the 2012 high density rate was. And now the preparation requirements for High Density Plus are exactly like the preparation requirements for high density, except you are required to have 300 pieces per carrier route in order to qualify. And then the next thing that the post office is introducing here in January is going to be a concept they're calling standard mail product samples. So what product samples are is it's a way for the post office to encourage more mailers to start sending samples of their product through the mail. So this could be anything from some example laundry detergent or toothpaste, all the way to, you know, if you wanted to send out a sample of a printed T-shirt or something along those lines, those would all be considered to be a product sample. And product samples are actually replacing the old standard mail marketing parcel carrier route rates. So the carrier route rates for standard mail marketing parcels are going to go away, and they're going to be replaced by these new product samples. And the way that they've architected this mail class is a little bit different than a lot of the rates that they've put together for the other types of mail. So where it used to be you'd get a discount based on the sortation of that container. So whether it was a 5-digit container or a 3-digit container, that would determine the rate that you were getting on those mail pieces. For product samples, the rate that you get actually has to do with the total number of pieces that you have in that mailing. So you'll see here if you mail a few pieces, you're going to have a higher rate than if you mail more pieces in that entire mailing. They also separated out the mailings into whether they're targeted, which means they have an address on them, or if they want to send a sample to everyone at that carrier route. So they're calling that every door. So you'll see there are separate rate categories for each. And you'll also notice that there are rates that are listed for small and large parcels, and that just has to do with the actual size of the parcel. And so if it's a small piece, it'll be a little bit less expensive than those larger pieces there. Let's talk a little bit more about some other things that the Post Office is introducing in 2013. They did introduce quite a few incentive programs that they're going to be effective next year. And they have been doing this on a smaller scale using the mobile barcode incentive and the incentive they just had for the holiday mobile barcode incentive. And so they're kind of expanding that in 2013. And you'll see here that we have 6 different promotions that have been announced. And the nice thing is we have an idea now of what each of these are going to be, so you can start planning your campaigns for next year. So the first is going to be this mobile coupon click-to-call incentive. And I have a little bit more information about that incentive as well. In April and June, if you send reply mail and you encourage your customers to send their information back using that reply mail piece, you'll have an incentive for them to do so in April and June. In August and September, there's actually 3 incentives that are going to be available. The first is for emerging technologies. So this is if you are on the cutting edge of mail piece design. You're using things like augmented reality and RFID and location-based processing. You can get a discount on your postage if you're using one of those in August and September. Also, if you want to try out the picture permit incentive in August and September, there is a way for you to print a picture in that permit imprint area in the upper right-hand side of your mail piece where your indicia goes. You can actually get an incentive for using a picture there in August and September. And then also they're going to encourage more people to use those product samples in August and September as well. They're really trying to reinvigorate that sample market. And then in November and December, just in time for the holidays, they're going to reinstantiate their mobile coupon or their mobile barcode incentive, and so they're calling it Mobile Buy It Now. And so it's a way for them to encourage mailers to have a mobile online site to buy the information that's off of their mail piece. So let's talk a little bit more about this first incentive that's going to happen here in March. So if you do want to be eligible for this program, then you can get a 2% discount off of all of your postage for standard mail and periodic, or I'm sorry, it should just be standard mail. So what you'd need to do in order to qualify for this is first you would need to have something on the mail piece. It could be a barcode or another indicator that will actually lead the person who's using that mail piece through their either their tablet or their phone, either to a mobile coupon that they'll be able to redeem right off of their mobile device, or a way for them to initiate a phone call based off of that barcode. So, for example, if you didn't want to include a coupon on your mail piece, you could have something that says, "Scan this barcode to call our sales department." So in order to be eligible for this, you would need to send either first class or standard mail letters and flats. You are required to pre-register for this program, and you would need to use electronic documentation and the Intelligent Mail barcode if you're using automation rates. And you have a 2-month window in order to qualify for that program. And if you have additional questions about the additional incentives that are available, all of that information is available at RIBS. That's ribs.usps.gov, and there's a full description of all of the incentives available on that website. So let's talk about a few of the other things that are going to be changing here in January. The first is for those people who are using electronic documentation, there are going to be new versions that are going to be available here. You can use the previous versions, or you can start migrating to these new versions. So if you're using mail.dat, we recommend that you start migrating over to the 13.1 format. And then for mail.xml, there's a new format called 13.0, and so you will be able to continue to use the 12-2 and the 12.0 formats here. But if you are using any of the new systems, so if you're using High Density Plus or if you're using product samples, then you would be required to migrate over to these new eDoc versions. Another thing that's going to be changing here is going to be some information in the Intelligent Mail barcode for traditional ACS. So for those mailers who've been using traditional ACS and they want to be able to use the same mailer ID on both their traditional and their one-code ACS mail pieces, there is going to be a new service type ID that's available specifically for those traditional ACS pieces so the post office can differentiate them. So that will be effective January 27th as well. And also, if you're a user of the Business Customer Gateway, which is your portal into the Postal One system, there are going to be some improvements to the Business Customer Gateway as well. They're really working on making that site more usable. It is still a little bit cumbersome at times, but they are definitely making some good improvements. Now, for users of Satori software products, you're probably wondering, this is all good, but how is this going to affect my software? And so the first thing to note is all of these prices and the postage statements, everything is going to be included in the February release of your software. So as soon as you receive that February release, we strongly recommend that you install it. And that'll make sure that all of your mailings that are dated January 27th or later are going to get those new rates and forms. You will be getting the February release a little bit earlier this time. So our development team is just wrapping up the coding right now, and we're hoping to have this available to you as early in January as possible. If you are signed up for electronic delivery of your updates, then you'll be receiving a contact information as soon as this is available, and you'll be able to install it right away. Now, included in your February update is going to be all the new prices, all the new postage statements. We are supporting pretty much everything that's going to be effective here for January 27th. We are supporting the High Density Plus rates, the new product samples, and that new first-class residual single-piece rate. We will have support for the March and April incentive program built in there, as well as the new electronic documentation versions and those new ACS service type IDs for the Intelligent Mail barcode. So pretty much everything that's included in this rate change is going to be available in your Satori product today. There is one exception here, and that is going to be for carrier route marketing parcels. So if you are using the carrier route marketing parcels today, I recommend not installing that February update until January 27th, because as soon as you install that update, then that carrier route marketing parcel option, it will go away. So let's talk a little bit about where you can get additional information about this. The first thing you'll probably want to know is where can I get these new prices? So the new prices and postage statements are posted on the USPS website. They're posted at the Postal Explorer, which is pe.usps.gov, and all of the links for those are on the right-hand side of the Postal Explorer page. If you'd like some more detailed information about the rate changes, and you'd like to get the DMM language that applies to these new rate categories and everything, then all of those are available at the Federal Register page of the Postal Explorer site, so pe.usps.gov/Federal Register notices. If you'd like something that's a little bit less technical and a little bit more approachable, we do have a whole set of tech notes that cover all of the topics that we talked about today, and those are available on the Satori software website. So you can go to the tech notes section and search for January 27th, or you can just see the link that's available here. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up the panel for questions here. Feel free to just type a question in that questions panel in the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of the screen. and we'll go through as many of these as we can. We've actually tried the raise hand feature in GoToWebinar, but we haven't had much success with it, so I'd prefer that you type your question into that questions box on the right-hand side there. If you do have any questions after the webinar today, feel free to contact our support department. They're very knowledgeable about all of these changes, and you can contact them at support@satorisoftware.com, or you can dial them directly at 800-357-3020, and they'd be happy to take your call. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and go through these questions that are available here, and feel free to type them in, and we'll make sure that we get them all covered. So the first question here is, what is the difference between first class and standard mail? And you can see from the rates that standard mail tends to be a little bit cheaper. First class is going to be personal correspondence that's specific to the person who's actually receiving the mail. So this could be invoices or bills or personal correspondence. Standard mail is something that when you're sending it, it doesn't really matter that it gets to that specific person. So if you have Jane Doe at 123 Main Street. If Jane Doe had moved and John Smith had moved in, then it would be okay if he got that mail piece. The next question, is there a link available through USPS.com with all of the rate changes? Yes, I would definitely recommend going to that pe.usps.com website, and there's actually an Excel spreadsheet that includes all of the new rates in it, and so you'll be able to use that data. The next question is, EDDM rates are lower than the 16 cents if the mailing is taken to the delivering BMEU. Right now, when we do that, the rate is 14.5. Yeah, so if you are dropping at the BMEU, then you'll be able to continue to get the carrier route saturation rate. The next question is, any idea on the rates for postcards, single piece and bulk? And so, so the rates for single piece postcards went up a penny, and the bulk rates went up on average about 2–2.5%. The next question, is the mobile barcode the same as a QR code? The QR code is one type of mobile barcode. So the QR codes are probably the most common form of mobile barcode that are out there, but there are several other mobile barcodes that are available, and so they didn't want to limit it to just QR codes, so that's why they call it a mobile barcode instead. The next question, is a written version of this presentation available? We will be posting both the recording and the slides for this on our website by the end of the week. So, and we'll go ahead and send everyone who attended today a notification when those are available on the website. The next question is, you had mentioned the MDA rep earlier. I'm newer to Presort Mail. How do I locate my MDA rep? And actually, you can search for your MDA on the RIBS website. So if you go to ribbs.usps.gov and look for Mail Piece Design Analyst there, then you should be able to contact your MDA. The next question is, could you explain the first-class residual piece rate in more detail? So unfortunately, this residual rate is a little bit confusing. There are a lot of people who are confused by this rate. And basically, it only applies when you are combining both 1 ounce and 2 ounce pieces in the same container, so in the same tray. And so only in that case would you be getting this residual piece rate. Otherwise, you would be getting either the first class retail rate for your single piece mail, or or you would be getting a little bit more if it was over 1 ounce. You'd get that additional ounce charge there. The next question is, I've seen a few references to full-service intelligent mail barcodes and that everyone is going to be forced to migrate to it. Is this correct? And this is correct. So the Post Office right now for 2013 will not be requiring full service. However, in 2014, they intend to have all of their automation mailers migrate over to full service. So you would be required to prepare your mail for full service in order to get your automation discounts. The next question is, are there changes in the postcard size or layouts? No, postcards have not changed at all. The next question, on an FSM, can the tabs be can the tabs only be positioned on the sides, as in the example picture, or can they go to the far sides of the top edge? So the pictures that I included on this presentation are not comprehensive. There are cases when you can tab at the top rather at the sides, and I know for a lot of the tabbing equipment it's easier to tab at the top there. So so I would definitely recommend going to the RIBS website for folded self-mailers, because it has a more comprehensive set of diagrams that would be acceptable. The next question is, how do you do the electronic documentation? We actually have several webinars that we've done around electronic documentation, and there are recordings of those available on our website. So if you're interested in electronic documentation, I would strongly recommend that you check out those other webinars. So you can see them at satorisoftware.com/webinars, and there's a link to the RO for our archived webinars there. The next question is, can you explain a little bit more about the Earned Value Reply Mail program? So what this is a little bit different incentive program that the Post Office is offering for 2013. And basically, it's a rebate program. So what you would do is you would be sending out your mail pieces with that reply piece in them. And then for all of the mail pieces that are returned to you with that reply mail piece, you would be getting a rebate. The next question is, also in your incentive regarding picture and permit, can the picture be your logo, and are there size or shape restraints? So the picture permit information is all available on RIBS. Pre-approval of your artwork is required, so you'll definitely want to contact your MDA to get started on picture permit. The next question is, where can I find additional information about the new IMB guidelines and IMB info working with my Satori software? We do have quite a bit of information about creating the Intelligent Mail barcode on our website. We have a webinar that's available, the Intelligent Mail 101 webinar that's been recorded and is available now on our website, so you can access that right after this webinar if you'd like. There's also the Intelligent Mail pages in our support section have a comprehensive set of steps for how to use the Intelligent Mail barcode in your Satori software products, including a recording of how to use it inside of Bulk Mailer if that's the program that you're using. The next question is, where do we get the new IMB font? Do we have to purchase this font? Is it only available for our Satori software? If the font is in Bulk Mailer, is the way to get it for our other mailing programs such as XMPie. When you install the Satori programs, such as Bulk Mailer or Mailroom Toolkit, we actually install a Windows font onto that computer for the Intelligent Mail barcode. So that is available to you that you can use in any other program if you are working in Word or XMPie on that same computer. If you would like to use that font on other computers, you can actually download a free version of those fonts on our website. So if you go to the support section of satorisoftware.com and go to resources, there's a link there where you can actually access that Intelligent Mail barcode font. The next question is, we want to know if the length of most trifold mailers is 11 inches, and does it have to be cut to 10.5 inches? Yes, the length of folded self-mailers now is 10.5 inches, so if you use an 11-inch folded self-mailer, that is no longer going to be considered an automation piece, so it'll have to go at a machinable rate, or I'm sorry, a non-machinable rate. The next question, with the new rates, will the IM barcode have to remain a certain distance from the address label? All of the regulations about where that barcode fits in relation to your address barcode or your actual address block have been in place for quite some time. They're a little bit they're pretty similar to what you've already been using with the PostNet barcode. So the actual placement shouldn't be too much trouble. And as always, we do recommend that you contact your MDA if you have any questions about the placement and the reading of those barcodes. And also another really good way to handle that is to print some sample pieces, take it down to your local post office or your entry unit there, and have them run those pieces on Merlin. And having them run that on Merlin, you're making sure that all of your barcodes are readable by their systems. Any question regarding international rates? Will there only be one rate for letters now? Currently, there are cheaper rates for Canada and Mexico. So the international rates, unfortunately, I haven't researched fully. They are introducing a new forever stamp for for international mail, which is an interesting thing. But I do believe they are trying to do one rate for those basic letters. The next question is, I currently use Satori software, first-class pre-sort that I bring to the post office. Would I have to switch to the Intelligent Mail barcode? And that depends on whether or not you are currently claiming the automation rates. If you're doing just a regular pre-sort, then you would not be required to use that barcode, but we do encourage it. If you're doing automation rates, then you would be required to use that barcode. Next question, can we obtain a copy of this slide presentation? We will be posting all of these slides on our website, and we'll send you out an email when those are available. The next question is another question about residual rate. When you say in the same tray, does that mean it is pre-sorted as well, or can it be in any random order? It would be in pre-sorted order, but you may have the first piece may be a 1 ounce piece, and then another 2 ounce, and then a couple 1 ounce. So the 1 and 2 ounces would be intermingled across the entire tray. Okay. Next question, what is the difference between the full-service Intelligent Mail barcode versus regular Intelligent Mail barcode? We could probably fill an hour with all that content, and we actually have a webinar that's available that's been recorded called Intelligent Mail 201, all about the full-service barcode and the differences there. So if you have questions about full-service versus the regular Intelligent Mail barcode, I strongly recommend that you check out that webinar, Intelligent Mail 201, on our website. The next question, for a folded self-mailer, what is the minimum and maximum size to qualify for a letter rate? So for a letter rate for folded self-mailers, the minimum is going to be the regular minimum for a letter size piece, but the maximum is going to be 6 inches high and 10.5 inches long. And so anything longer than that would be considered a non-machinable piece. Next question, for tabbing a 3-panel piece, the loose flap would have to be at the top of the piece and the folded edge on the bottom. Yes, that's exactly true. The next question, do return envelopes have to have barcodes on them next year? Yes, if you are doing return, so if you're doing business reply mail or qualified business reply mail, you would have to have the Intelligent Mail barcode on them starting in 2013. The next question, will the mail.dat requirements require my attention by IT, or will Satori take care of it? We will actually we'll be supporting those new mail.dat requirements out of the box with the February release. So, so your IT department will be able to continue to process just as they always have. So submitting those files won't be changing at all. You'll probably have to download a new mail.dat uploader tool from the post office, but otherwise everything will be handled within your product. The next question, what are the changes for second-class daily newspapers? So as far as periodicals go, pretty much the only thing that's changing is going to be the rates. The next question is, I had heard the IMB deadline of January 27th is only for outgoing mail. Incoming mail can still use PostNet. Is that true? So the IMB deadline is for automation mail, which is generally your outgoing mail. However, if you are using a business reply piece, they do want everyone to start migrating over to that Intelligent Mail barcode as well. The next question, can you use the same mailer ID for all pieces? Yes, you can. And that could be your mailer ID or a service provider's or your customer's mailer ID. The next question, with folded self-mailers with inserts, what are the new standards for securing the inside insert aside from a pocket? So anytime you're having an insert with a folded self-mailer, it needs to be secured either in a pocket or it would need to be secured directly to the mail piece. And there are actually some standards for that are available on the RIBS website, and there are some really good examples of how to secure those inserts available. So if you go to ribs.usps.gov and look for folded self-mailers, there's definitely some good information there. Next question, please explain more about carrier routes. So for carrier routes, again, that's going to be when you're preparing mail specifically for each carrier at each zip code. And the new rates that have been introduced for carrier routes are for high density plus, and those would need to be in walk sequence order, and you would need to have at least 300 pieces per carrier route in order to qualify for that new high density plus rate, or you can continue using the high density rate at 125 pieces per carrier route. The next question is, the RIBS website does not mention anything regarding where the address block needs to be. Can you clarify? And I guess I would need to know whether you're talking about the new rules for folded self-mailers or for just the Intelligent Mail barcode in general. The Intelligent Mail barcode rules are actually in the DMM, but the new address block placement rules for folded self-mailers are available on RIBS. Next question is, do EDDM rates, are EDDM rates new for nonprofit organizations? And so they don't actually do the retail rates, the EDDM retail for nonprofit. So it would just be the regular carrier route saturation rates for nonprofit. The next question is, do the tabs need to be 1 inch from the top of the mailing piece? Yeah, they'll need to be at least 1 inch from the corners. Okay. Next question, do all the EDDM rules stay the same? Yes, all the rules for EDDM stay the same, just the rate is changing. The next question is, for the picture permit indicia imprint, it lists color images only as a requirement. Does that mean black and white logos will not work? I'm actually not familiar with all of the rules for the picture permit, but I believe that's true. I believe it does need to be a color. Okay, and then the next question is, the RIBS website doesn't mention any of the address block requirements for folded self-mailers. And so, there is a little bit of information on the folded self-mailer webpage that indicates that those addresses need to be on the final panel. Cannot have the address, I guess is the best way to put it. The final panel that's on your folded self-mailer cannot have the address. It needs to be on the back of the mail piece. If we are labeled a labeled flat standard mailer, will the barcode change affect our label sizes? So if you use labels right now, depending on the size of those labels, if you're currently printing a PostNet barcode, the Intelligent Mail barcode is about 1/4 of an inch longer. We actually do offer a font that shrinks down that barcode as far as it can go, but you will need to make sure that that barcode does fit completely on your labels, but it won't be a very large change. The next question, how can we find out regarding the earned value reply mail rebates? Do we need to pre-register? Yes, all of the incentive programs you will need to pre-register for, and you can find out more information about all of the incentives on RIBS. And so, you can go to ribs.usps.gov, and there's some information there about their incentive programs. The next question, do return envelopes that get a stamp need a barcode? If you're not doing business reply mail, then you won't need to do that. The next question, will design on the labels automatically change with the upgrade for periodicals? You will need to, if you already have a print template set up for your barcodes and for your labels, you will need to upgrade those to Intelligent Mail. It won't be automatic. The next question, will there be a big adjustment in switching from basic IMB versus full service IMB? As far as add-ons, will the switch cost significantly? And it really depends on what parts of full service you want to support. So if you have information, if you want to get more information about full service versus basic Intelligent Mail, I do recommend that you check out our Intelligent Mail 201 class, and we actually have some additional classes about electronic documentation that I recommend that you take a look at, because that can get into quite a bit of information, and we don't have too much time left. So. The next question, is there any information available on the other option for electronic documentation other than mail.dat? So there are actually 3 ways that you can satisfy the electronic documentation requirement. You can use mail.dat, or you can use mail.xml, or the Postal Wizard. And we do have information about all of those in our other webinars. Next question, you said that just said that return envelopes will now need to have the Intelligent Mail barcode. Will this be for the return address the response envelope is being returned to? So this will be the address the reply piece is getting sent to, not from your original recipient's location. The next question is, does electronic delivery cost extra? It depends on which option you choose. So, so there are different pricing things that are available. I recommend that you contact your account manager here for pricing information. There are different requirements about the sealing tab size used on different pieces, 1 inch versus 1.5 inch. Do you know where I can find info on this? Basically, the rules are if you are mailing a piece that is less than 1 ounce, then a 1 inch size tab is going to be sufficient. If you're mailing over an ounce, then they recommend a 1.5 or a 2 inch size tab. The next question, who should wait for January 27th download? And the only people that should wait to install the February disk is going to be the people who are currently using the standard mail marketing parcels at a carrier route rate. So there are very few people who should wait. The next question, do they still allow the 1 inch, and I assume you mean the 1 inch tab on folded self-mailers? Yes, you can for pieces that are under 1 ounce. Okay, and then the next question is, where can I locate the past webinars or classes? And so all of our webinars are available on our website right now. The recording for today will be posted by the end of the week, and those will be available on our archived webinar page on our website, and that's at satorisoftware.com/webinars, and then there's a link there for our archived webinars. So it looks like that's all the questions for today. We do appreciate you coming to this webinar today. We hope it was useful for you. When you close out of the webinar today, you will be redirected to a survey. We would appreciate it if you would fill that out, because that is going to give us the information we need to improve these webinars in the future. And again, these slides and a recording of this webinar will be available by the end of the week, and that'll be available at satorisoftware.com/learn/webinar/archive sessions, or you can just go to the website and go to the webinar page to access the archive session page. If you guys have any questions after the webinar today, feel free to contact our support department. We'll be glad to help, and we thank you for coming.